My neighbor stopped me at the house. Do you know that every Wednesday a strange man comes to your place? My heart stopped. I immediately installed hidden cameras. When I watched the footage, I couldn't believe my eyes. On the screen was, "Good day, dear listeners. It's Clara again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled." My life had settled into a comfortable rhythm after George passed 3 years ago. Every morning, I watered the roses he'd planted. Every Tuesday, I volunteered at the library. And every Friday, my daughter Linda called from Seattle. The house on Maple Street felt too big for one person, but it held 40 years of memories I wasn't ready to abandon. I had my routines, my book club, my neighbor Carol, who brought over casseroles she claimed were experiments. At 72, I'd earned my quiet existence. The mortgage was paid off, my pension covered the bills, and I'd even started taking watercolor classes at the community center. That Wednesday afternoon, in late September, I was returning from the grocery store, struggling with 2 bags of supplies, when my neighbor Jim stopped me at the driveway. Jim worked from home, spent most of his day in his home office with a clear view of my front door. We'd lived next to each other for 15 years, exchanged pleasantries about weather and lawn care, nothing more. "Margaret," he said, his expression unusually serious. "I hope this doesn't sound intrusive, but are you aware that every Wednesday, around 11 in the morning, an unfamiliar man enters your house?" My heart stopped. The grocery bags suddenly felt like they weighed 100 pounds. "What man?" I managed to ask, my voice barely steady. "Middle-aged guy, maybe 45, 50, dark hair. He has a key. Lets himself right in. Stays about 2 hours, then leaves. I've seen him 4, maybe 5 times now. Always Wednesdays." I forced a smile, though my hands were trembling. "Oh, that must be the maintenance person for the furnace." But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. I had no maintenance person. No one had a key to my house except Linda, and she was 2,000 miles away. Jim looked uncertain, like he wanted to believe me but didn't quite. "All right, just wanted to make sure everything was okay. These days, you can't be too careful." I thanked him, carried my groceries inside, and locked the door behind me. Then I stood in my hallway, really looking at my house for the first time in months. Everything seemed normal. The family photos on the wall, George's reading chair, the Afghan I was knitting draped over the sofa. But was everything where it should be? I walked through each room slowly. The kitchen seemed untouched. The living room looked the same. But in my bedroom, I noticed something odd. My jewelry box, the wooden one George had given me on our 20th anniversary, was positioned slightly differently on the dresser. I always kept it aligned with the lamp. Now it was turned at an angle. My hands shook as I opened it. Everything appeared to be there. My pearl necklace, my wedding ring set, the small diamond earrings. But I couldn't be certain. I didn't inventory my jewelry regularly. Something could be missing, and I might never know. I checked the spare bedroom that had been Linda's. The closet door was slightly ajar. I always kept it closed. Always. Was I being paranoid? Maybe I'd opened it myself and forgotten. But Jim's words echoed in my mind. Every Wednesday, around 11. He has a key. I returned to the kitchen and sat at the table where George and I had shared countless cups of coffee. My mind raced through possibilities. A previous owner who still had a key? Impossible. We'd changed the locks when we bought the place. A contractor I'd forgotten hiring? I hadn't hired anyone in over a year. Could Linda have given someone a key? But why wouldn't she tell me? Then a darker thought crept in. What if this person was stealing from me gradually, taking things I wouldn't immediately notice? Or worse, what if they were watching me, learning my patterns, waiting for What? I picked up the phone to call Linda, then set it down. What would I say? A strange man has been entering our house while I'm out, but I have no proof, and nothing seems to be missing? She'd think I was losing my mind, becoming one of those paranoid elderly people who imagine threats everywhere. But Jim had seen him. Jim was a reliable witness. I looked at the calendar on my refrigerator. Today was Wednesday. He'd already been here today while I was at the grocery store. The violation I felt was overwhelming. My home, my sanctuary, had been invaded. Someone was walking through my rooms, touching my things, breathing my air. And I had no idea who or why or what they wanted. I spent the entire evening going through my house with a notebook, cataloging everything I could remember. The silver picture frames in the living room, I counted them twice. The collection of first edition books George had cherished, I ran my fingers along each spine. My prescription medications in the bathroom cabinet, all accounted for. But then I found discrepancies that made my blood run cold. In the study, George's coin collection was kept in a leather binder in the bottom desk drawer. I'd last looked at it 6 months ago, after the estate lawyer had mentioned it might have value. I remembered there had been approximately 40 coins, including some rare wheat pennies and a silver dollar from 1889. Now there were 36. I was certain. 4 coins were missing. I sat on the floor, the binder open in my lap, and let myself feel the full weight of it. Someone had been systematically robbing me. Not everything at once, that would be too obvious. Just small items, things I might not notice for months or years. How long had this been going on? Jim said he'd seen the man 4 or 5 times. But what if it had started earlier? I thought about calling the police. But what would I tell them? Some coins were missing, I thought. My jewelry box had been moved, maybe. I had no proof of break-in, no evidence of forced entry. And the person had a key. The key. That was the crucial question. Who had access to my house keys? I retrieved my purse and examined my key ring. House key, car key, the small key to my safe deposit box. All present. Linda had her copy in Seattle. I'd given it to her years ago for emergencies. I'd never made another copy, or had I? Then I remembered. 2 years ago, when I'd had that bad flu, Linda had arranged for a home health aide to check on me for a week. A nice woman named Patricia. I'd given her a key, but I'd asked for it back when I recovered, and she'd returned it. Hadn't she? Suddenly, my comfortable, familiar home felt like enemy territory. I found myself looking over my shoulder, checking the locks twice, 3 times. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the old house settling made me bolt upright, heart racing. By Thursday morning, exhausted but resolved, I knew I couldn't live like this. I refused to be a victim, to cower in my own home while some stranger violated my privacy and stole from me. George had always said I was tougher than I looked, that I had steel underneath the sweetness. It was time to prove him right. I needed proof, concrete, undeniable evidence of who this person was and what they were doing. Over my morning coffee, I developed my plan. First, I would document everything valuable in my house. Photographs, lists, even videos on my phone. Create a baseline of what I owned. Second, I would set traps. Not dangerous ones, but markers that would prove someone had been inside. Tiny pieces of tape on drawers, positioned just so. A hair across the jewelry box latch. A notepad left open to a specific page. But most importantly, I needed to see who this person was. I'd heard about home security cameras, the kind people installed to watch their front porches for package thieves. Could I get one? Install it myself? The idea seemed daunting. I could barely manage my smartphone. But I had to try. I drove to the electronics store in the shopping center, feeling like a spy on a mission. A young salesman, maybe 25, with enthusiastic energy and multiple ear piercings, approached me. "Can I help you find something?" "Security cameras," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "The kind I can monitor from my phone. Small ones, if possible." His face lit up. "Absolutely. We've got several great options. Are you looking to monitor your front door or—" "Inside my house," I interrupted. "I need to see what happens when I'm not home." If he thought it was an odd request from an elderly woman, he didn't show it. He led me to a display of various cameras and began explaining features I barely understood: wireless connectivity, cloud storage, motion detection, night vision. This one, I pointed to a small camera barely larger than a doorbell. "How hard is it to install?" "Super easy. Download the app, plug it in, follow the setup wizard. My grandmother did it herself." I bought 2 cameras and spent the rest of Thursday watching YouTube tutorials on my laptop, Linda's old tablet propped beside me. Technology that would have terrified me a week ago now seemed like a weapon I desperately needed to master. By Friday evening, I had both cameras hidden and operational. One in my bedroom, positioned to see anyone who approached my dresser. Another in the study, aimed at George's desk. Now all I had to do was wait until Wednesday and watch my own home being invaded. The weekend crawled by with agonizing slowness. I went through the motions of my normal routine, watered the garden, attended Sunday service, had lunch with Carol. But my mind was elsewhere, constantly checking the camera app on my phone, reviewing the footage of my empty rooms. On Monday, Linda called for our usual chat. I almost told her everything, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the fear that she'd dismiss my concerns, insist I move to Seattle, treat me like I was becoming incompetent. Or maybe some instinct told me to wait until I had proof. "You sound tired, Mom," Linda said. "Are you sleeping okay?" "Just fine, sweetheart. How's work?" We talked about her promotion, her new apartment, her boyfriend Marcus, who might propose soon. Normal mother-daughter conversation. The whole time I clutched the phone, wondering if I should mention that a stranger had been invading the home where she grew up. Tuesday afternoon, as I was leaving for my library shift, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. My neighbor Jim was outside washing his car, and when he saw me, he waved with unusual enthusiasm. Then I saw why. A man was walking up Jim's driveway, middle-aged, dark hair, wearing a maintenance company uniform. But I recognized something about his build, his gait. Was this the Wednesday visitor? Had he been watching, learning that Jim had warned me? Was he now befriending my neighbor to seem legitimate? I couldn't be certain. Paranoia was making me see threats everywhere. Wednesday morning, I left the house at exactly 10:30, my heart pounding so hard I felt lightheaded. I drove to the coffee shop 3 blocks away, ordered a latte I couldn't taste, and opened the camera app on my phone with shaking hands. At 10:47 a.m., motion detection activated. A man entered my bedroom. I watched, frozen, as he walked directly to my dresser with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where he was going. Dark hair, just as Jim had described. Maybe 48, 50 years old. He wore jeans and a polo shirt, looking utterly ordinary. He opened my jewelry box. My breath caught as he carefully sorted through it, selecting specific pieces. He knew what he was looking for. This wasn't random theft. Then he did something that made my blood run cold. He pulled out a small notebook from his pocket and made a check mark, like he was following a list, a systematic inventory. But worse was coming. He moved to my nightstand and opened the drawer where I kept personal papers. Old letters from George, some savings bonds, my updated will. He photographed several documents with his phone. Why? What possible use could those have? The camera in the study captured him next. He went straight to George's desk, pulled out the coin binder, and removed 2 more coins. But he also did something I hadn't anticipated. He opened my laptop. The password was written on a sticky note underneath, a terrible habit I'd never corrected, and inserted a thumb drive. He was copying my files, my emails, my financial records, everything. I sat in that coffee shop, watching a stranger violate every aspect of my privacy, and felt something shift inside me. The fear was still there, but it was being consumed by cold, focused rage. After 2 hours, he left, locking the door behind him as casually as if he lived there. I waited 15 minutes to be certain he was gone, then drove home. I didn't go inside immediately. Instead, I sat in my car and called the one person I knew could help me understand the legal implications. My late husband's attorney, Robert Chen, had handled George's estate and had always told me to call if I needed anything. He was semi-retired now, but he answered on the third ring. "Margaret, what a pleasant surprise. How are you?" "Robert, I need your advice. Someone has been entering my home without permission. They have a key. They've been stealing from me and copying my personal files. I have video evidence." There was a pause. When he spoke again, his voice was sharp, professional. "Have you called the police?" "Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. Margaret, this is serious. This isn't just burglary. If they're accessing your financial information and legal documents, this could be identity theft, fraud, possibly even worse. Do you have any idea who this person might be?" "No. But Robert, here's what frightens me most. He has a key. He knows my schedule. He's following a list of what to take. This is planned, organized. Who has keys to your house?" "Just me and Linda." Another pause. Longer this time. "Margaret, I need you to think carefully. Has Linda mentioned any financial difficulties? Any unusual requests?" The implication hit me like a physical blow. "You think my daughter is involved? I think you need to consider all possibilities. Can you send me the video footage?" I promised I would and ended the call. My hands were shaking again, but not from fear, from the terrible question now planted in my mind. Could Linda be behind this? No, impossible. But then who? I went inside and checked my laptop's history. The man had accessed my email, my bank accounts, my investment portfolio. He'd even opened the folder containing my will. That's when I saw it. A draft email in my sent folder that I hadn't written, dated from last Wednesday. It was to Linda, and it said, "Sweetheart, I've been thinking about updating my will. Can you recommend an estate attorney in town? The house and savings should really be distributed more fairly." I'd never sent that email. I'd never even thought about changing my will. Someone was setting me up, and they were using my own daughter to do it. That forged email was the confirmation I needed. This wasn't random theft. Someone was deliberately trying to create a narrative, a paper trail that would make Linda look like she was manipulating me, possibly to contest the will or claim I was incompetent. But why? Who benefited from destroying my relationship with my daughter? I called Robert Chen back. "I need to change all my locks, today. Can you recommend a locksmith you trust absolutely? I'll send you a contact." "Margaret, I also think we should involve the police now." "Not yet. I need to understand who's behind this first. If we go to the police too early, whoever this is will disappear, and I'll never know the truth." After we hung up, I made a list, lock changes, password changes on every account, remove that damn sticky note from my laptop, set up two-factor authentication. Linda had been urging me to do that for years, but I also made a more aggressive plan. Next Wednesday, I wouldn't leave. I'd wait inside, and when this man entered my home, I'd confront him directly. I'd have my phone ready to call 911, my new locks would be installed, and I'd finally get answers. The locksmith, a burly man named Tom, who'd served with Robert's son in the military, arrived that afternoon. He changed every lock, installed deadbolts, and gave me the only copies of the new keys. Ma'am, whoever had access before won't be getting in again, he assured me. These are pick-resistant, bump-proof locks. You're secure. I felt a small measure of safety return. But that evening, it all fell apart. My phone rang at 8 p.m., unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mrs. Patterson? A man's voice, smooth and educated. I think we need to talk about the unfortunate misunderstanding regarding your home. My heart stopped. Who is this? Someone who has your best interests at heart. You see, we've noticed you've been making some changes. New locks, security cameras. Very industrious for someone your age. But I'm afraid you're interfering with important work. Important work? You mean stealing from me? A low chuckle. Such an ugly word. Think of it as asset reallocation. You have more than you need, Margaret. More than a woman alone requires. We're simply ensuring that resources go where they're most useful. The audacity took my breath away. I'm calling the police right now. I wouldn't do that. You see, we have quite a bit of documentation showing that you've been experiencing memory issues. Those emails you don't remember sending? The financial decisions that seem erratic? Your own daughter is worried about you. In fact, there's already a folder being prepared for Adult Protective Services. It would be terrible if Linda had to pursue a conservatorship. The threat was clear. They'd frame me as mentally incompetent, make Linda believe I needed to be declared unable to manage my own affairs. You can't do this, I said, but my voice shook. It's already done, Margaret. The question is whether you want to make this easy or difficult. Work with us, sign a few documents, and you can live out your days in peace. Fight us, and you'll spend your remaining years fighting your own daughter in court, being poked and prodded by doctors trying to prove you're senile. Your choice. He hung up before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen, phone still in my hand, feeling the full weight of the trap closing around me. They'd thought of everything. Create evidence of my incompetence, turn Linda against me, isolate me from my own life. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. I immediately called Robert Chen again. They just threatened me. I need you to document everything, create a sealed file with all the evidence I've collected. If anything happens to me, if there's any attempt to declare me incompetent, this needs to go to the authorities immediately. Consider it done. Margaret, are you safe there tonight? My locks are changed, they can't get in. But even as I said it, I wondered. If they were sophisticated enough to plan all this, what else might they do? That night, I packed a bag and drove to a hotel near the airport. I checked in under a fake name, paying cash like some kind of fugitive, and barely slept, jumping at every sound in the hallway. The next morning, Thursday, I returned home to find everything appeared normal. But there was a note slipped under my front door, written in careful block letters. Stop fighting. Last warning. I picked it up with a tissue, placed it in a plastic bag. More evidence. But evidence for what? I still didn't know who these people were. I needed help. Real, professional help. I spent the next 3 days researching private investigators, finally settling on a retired FBI agent named Sarah Morrison, who specialized in financial crimes and elder fraud. She listened to my story without interruption, reviewed my camera footage, examined the forged email. When I finished, she nodded slowly. Mrs. Patterson, you're the victim of a sophisticated operation. This isn't one person. It's a team. They've done this before. Can you find out who they are? Yes, but it's going to take time, and you need to follow my instructions exactly. Can you do that? For the first time in days, I felt hope. Whatever it takes. Good, then we start by setting a trap of our own. Sarah Morrison moved quickly. Within 2 days, she'd installed additional cameras I couldn't even see, set up secure communication channels, and begun tracing the origin of that threatening phone call. She also gave me a small panic button that looked like a pendant. One press, and both she and the police would be alerted, Wear it always, she instructed. These people have shown they're willing to escalate. On Sunday, I returned to church as usual, maintaining my routine as Sarah had advised. Act normal, she'd said. Let them think you've been frightened into submission. After the service, as I was getting into my car, a woman approached me. Mid-40s, professionally dressed with a warm smile that didn't reach her eyes. Mrs. Patterson? My name is Diane Foster. I'm a social worker with Elder Care Services. I was hoping we could talk for a moment. My stomach clenched, but I kept my expression neutral. About what? Your daughter Linda contacted our office. She's concerned about you living alone. She mentioned some memory issues, some confusion with your finances. I completely understand. It's very common at your age. There's no shame in needing a little help. This was it, the next phase of their plan. I'm not experiencing any memory issues, I said calmly. And I certainly didn't authorize my daughter to contact social services. Diane's smile became sympathetic, patronizing. Mrs. Patterson? Denial is also very common. But Linda showed us some concerning emails, some erratic financial decisions. We just want to make sure you're safe. Perhaps we could schedule a home visit, just a friendly evaluation. No, thank you. I started to get into my car. She placed a hand on the door, preventing me from closing it. Mrs. Patterson, I should mention that if we receive reports of a vulnerable adult refusing necessary services, we can petition the court for an emergency evaluation. It would be much easier if you cooperated voluntarily. I looked directly into her eyes, channeling every ounce of steel George had always said I possessed. I am not refusing necessary services because none are necessary. I'm 72, not senile. I manage my own finances, my own home, and my own life perfectly well. If you have concerns, please put them in writing and send them to my attorney, Robert Chen. I'll give you his card. I handed her Robert's business card from my purse. Her smile finally faltered. That's really not necessary. We're just trying to help. Then help by leaving me alone. I closed the car door and drove away, hands shaking on the steering wheel. But I'd done it. I hadn't broken, hadn't shown weakness. That afternoon, an envelope was delivered to my door. Inside was a cashier's check for $50,000 and a typed note. Mrs. Patterson, we recognize this situation has been stressful for everyone involved. Please accept this as compensation for any distress you've experienced. All we ask is that you sign the enclosed document agreeing not to pursue any legal action, and we'll cease all contact. You can enjoy your retirement in peace. This is a generous offer. Please consider it carefully. The enclosed document was 3 pages of legal jargon that essentially signed away my right to report the theft, the harassment, or anything else they'd done. I photographed everything and sent it to both Sarah and Robert. Sarah called within 10 minutes. Don't sign anything. This proves they're worried. They wouldn't offer you money if they thought they had the upper hand. Should I cash the check? God, no. That could be construed as accepting the settlement. Leave it untouched. It's evidence. That evening, Carol stopped by with another casserole. As we sat at my kitchen table, I made a decision. I needed allies, people who knew the truth in case something happened to me. Carol, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without interrupting. I told her everything. The break-ins, the threats, the fake social worker, the bribes. She listened, her expression shifting from disbelief to anger. That's outrageous. Margaret, why didn't you tell me sooner? You shouldn't be going through this alone. I'm not alone anymore. I have a private investigator and an attorney, but I need you to know in case they try to make people think I'm losing my mind. Carol gripped my hand. Anyone who spends 5 minutes with you knows you're sharp as ever. I'll testify to that anywhere, anytime. The next person I needed to talk to was harder. I called Linda that night, my heart heavy. Mom, I was just thinking about you. How are you? Linda, sweetheart, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you contacted any social services agencies about me? There was a long silence. What? No. Why would I do that? Has anyone approached you claiming to be worried about my mental state? Mom, you're scaring me. What's going on? I took a deep breath. Someone has been impersonating you, trying to convince authorities that I'm incompetent. They've forged emails from my account to you. They've been stealing from me and threatening me. I need you to know that whatever you hear about me in the coming weeks, whatever documentation anyone shows you, it's not real. Linda's voice rose in panic. What? Who's doing this? Have you called the police? I have professionals handling it. But Linda, I need you to promise me something. If anyone contacts you claiming to represent me or claiming I need help, you verify it directly with me first. And if you can't reach me, you call Robert Chen. Promise me. I promise. Mom, I'm getting on a plane. I'll be there tomorrow. No, I said firmly. That's exactly what they'd want, to pull you into this, to make you worried and emotional. I'm handling it. I'm safe. But I needed you to know the truth. After we hung up, I felt lighter somehow. My daughter knew. My friend knew. I wasn't isolated anymore. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Sarah assured me this was normal. They were regrouping, deciding on their next move. They offered you money. You refused. They threatened legal action. You didn't flinch. They're losing control of the narrative. That makes them dangerous, but it also means they'll make mistakes. I spent those days documenting everything, organizing my evidence, and preparing for whatever came next. I also spent time in George's reading chair, looking through old photo albums, remembering the life we'd built together. Whatever these people were trying to take from me, they couldn't touch those memories. I wasn't just fighting for my house or my money. I was fighting for my dignity, my autonomy, and my right to live my own life on my own terms. And I was going to win. On the following Tuesday afternoon, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a well-dressed couple in their 50s, the man I recognized from my security footage, and a woman I'd never seen before. They stood on my porch looking respectable, almost friendly. Every instinct screamed at me not to open the door, but Sarah had prepared me for this possibility. I was wearing the panic button. My phone was recording in my pocket. Sarah herself was parked 2 blocks away, monitoring everything through the hidden cameras. I opened the door with the chain lock still engaged. "Can I help you?" The woman spoke first, her voice warm and cultured. "Mrs. Patterson, my name is Carolyn Hendricks, and this is my colleague, David Price. We owe you an enormous apology. There's been a terrible misunderstanding, and we'd like to clear the air. May we come in? Just for a few minutes? I don't think that's appropriate." David, the man who'd been stealing from me, had the audacity to look contrite. "Please, Mrs. Patterson, we understand you're frightened and angry. You have every right to be. But there are things you don't understand about the situation, and we'd really like to explain, against my better judgment, but trusting in Sarah's nearby presence and my panic button, I let them in. They sat in my living room, looking around with expressions I couldn't quite read. Carolyn began the performance. "Mrs. Patterson, I want to be completely honest with you. David did enter your home, and we understand how violating that must have felt. But he wasn't stealing. He was conducting an estate assessment." "An estate assessment? For whom?" "For your late husband's business partners," David interjected smoothly. "You see, when George died, there were some unresolved financial matters. Debts that were never properly settled. We've been trying to handle this discreetly, without alarming you, but—" "That's a lie," I interrupted. "George's estate was settled 3 years ago. Every debt was paid. I have documentation." Carolyn's smile tightened. "The documentation you have, yes. But Mrs. Patterson, there were some off-book arrangements, business dealings that weren't included in the official estate. George made some promises that legally you're now responsible for fulfilling. Then show me proof, written contracts, legal documents." "It's not that simple," David said. "These were gentlemen's agreements, handshake deals, the kind of business arrangements men of George's generation often made." I felt rage building in my chest. They were dishonoring my husband's memory, using him to justify their theft. George was the most honest man I ever knew. He would never have made commitments he couldn't keep, and he would never have left me with hidden debts. You're lying. The mask began to slip. Carolyn's warm expression cooled. Mrs. Patterson, you need to understand the position you're in. We've been extremely patient. We've tried to handle this quietly. But if you continue to be difficult, we have the means to make your life very complicated. You mean the forged emails? The fake social worker? The threats? David leaned forward. Those were just warnings. Gentle suggestions that cooperation would be in your best interest. But we can do much more than that. We have connections, Mrs. Patterson. Doctors who can testify about cognitive decline. Judges who owe us favors. We can have you declared incompetent and placed in a facility within a month. And then what? You take my house? My savings? We take what we're owed, Carolyn said flatly. What George promised us. The house alone would almost cover it. The house? Finally, the truth emerged. They wanted my home. Who are you really? I asked. You're not business associates. George would have mentioned you. Carolyn stood up, her pretense of friendliness completely gone. Who we are doesn't matter. What matters is that you have two options. You can sign the house over to us voluntarily. We'll give you a generous amount to live on, and you can relocate somewhere nice, maybe closer to Linda in Seattle. Or we can destroy you legally, emotionally, and financially, and take it anyway. Your choice. I choose option 3, I said calmly. I fight you with everything I have. David's face darkened. You're a 72-year-old woman, alone. You think you can fight us? I know I can. Carolyn laughed, a harsh sound without humor. You have no idea what you're up against. We've done this before, Mrs. Patterson. We're very good at it. Elderly people living alone in valuable properties. Your ideal targets. And we've never lost. There's a first time for everything. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. David stood, and for a moment, I felt genuine fear. He was larger than me, younger, stronger. If he wanted to hurt me, what could I do? But I didn't reach for the panic button. I met his eyes steadily. If you touch me, that's assault. My security cameras are recording everything. My attorney has copies of all my evidence. You can't make this go away. Carolyn grabbed David's arm. Let's go. She's not worth the trouble. Oh, we're not done, David said, his voice low and threatening. Not even close. You have no idea what's coming, old woman. They left, slamming the door behind them. I stood in my living room shaking and pressed the panic button. Sarah was inside within 2 minutes, gun drawn, checking every room. Are you hurt? No, but I got their threats on camera, all of it. She smiled grimly. Perfect. They just committed extortion on video. Now we've got them. But as I sat down, the adrenaline draining away, I felt a flutter of fear. They'd been so confident, so certain they would win. What did they know that I didn't? Still, beneath the fear was something stronger. Determination. They'd threatened me in my own home, dishonored my husband's memory, and tried to intimidate me into surrendering everything George and I had built together. They'd made a terrible mistake. They'd made it personal. Sarah worked quickly after their visit. The video of their threats gave her leverage to dig deeper, and what she uncovered was even worse than I'd imagined. Carolyn Hendricks and David Price weren't just con artists. They were part of a sophisticated elder fraud ring that had been operating across 3 states for nearly 5 years. They targeted widows and widowers, living alone in valuable properties, using the same pattern every time. Gain access, steal gradually, create evidence of incompetence, then force their victims to sign over assets. They've successfully stolen 4 houses this way, Sarah told me Wednesday morning. Total value, over $3 million. But we've never had a victim who fought back before. Most were too frightened or too confused to resist. Why haven't they been caught? Because their victims either don't realize what happened until it's too late, or they're too ashamed to report it. The ones who did try to fight ended up in conservatorships, declared incompetent. Carolyn has a brother who's a probate attorney. He handles the legal side. How did they get my key? Sarah's expression darkened. That home health aide, Patricia, 2 years ago. She wasn't a real healthcare worker. Linda hired her through an agency that doesn't exist anymore, a front company they created. Patricia copied your key and mapped your house. They've been planning this for 2 years. The calculation of it took my breath away. But I had one question Sarah hadn't answered. How do we stop them? We already have enough evidence to arrest them. But here's the problem. They're smart. They've hidden their money in offshore accounts, put the stolen houses in trust names, created layers of legal protection. Even if we get convictions, the victims rarely recover their full losses. So what do? Sarah smiled, and it wasn't a kind smile. We make them desperate enough to make mistakes. And I have a plan. That afternoon, Robert Chen filed a lawsuit against Carolyn Hendricks, David Price, and 3 of their associates, explicitly naming them in connection with fraud, theft, and elder abuse. The lawsuit detailed every crime, included stills from my security footage, and demanded full restitution. Simultaneously, Sarah contacted the FBI's Financial Crimes Division with her complete investigation. Arrest warrants would be issued within days. But we didn't wait for the legal system. We also did something more immediate. Robert sent a letter to every title company in the region warning them that any attempt to transfer the deed of my property should be considered fraudulent and reported immediately. The response was swift and vicious. Thursday evening, all 5 of them showed up at my door. Carolyn, David, and 3 others I'd never seen. 2 men and another woman. They didn't bother with pretense this time. I opened the door with Sarah standing beside me and 2 plainclothes police officers waiting in my kitchen. You stupid bitch, Carolyn spat, her cultured facade completely gone. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, I said calmly. I've exposed you. David pushed forward, his face red with rage. That lawsuit is public record. Our names are everywhere. You've destroyed years of work. Good. You destroyed people's lives, stole their homes, preyed on grief and loneliness. One of the men, thin and nervous-looking, pointed at me with a shaking finger. We can still fix this. We'll say you're crazy, that you imagined everything. With video evidence? Sarah interrupted. With FBI involvement? You're finished. The second man, larger and more threatening, stepped forward. We could make this go away, permanently. Old woman living alone, has a fall down the stairs. That was when the police officers emerged from the kitchen, badges visible. And that's terroristic threats on top of everything else, one officer said. You're all under arrest. The chaos that followed was almost satisfying. Carolyn tried to run and was tackled on my front lawn. David started yelling about lawyers. The nervous man began crying. The large one who'd threatened me tried to fight and ended up face down on my porch floor. Through it all, I stood in my doorway, watching the people who'd terrorized me being handcuffed and read their rights. Neighbors gathered on their lawns, including Jim, who gave me a thumbs up. But the moment that gave me the most satisfaction was when Carolyn, being led to the police car, looked back at me with pure hatred. You've ruined everything, she hissed. No, I replied, I stopped you from ruining anyone else. Later, after the police had taken them away and Sarah had finished her statements, I sat in George's reading chair and allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. I'd been targeted, violated, threatened, and manipulated. They'd tried to steal my home, my savings, my independence, and my relationship with my daughter. They'd underestimated me at every turn, assuming age made me weak. They'd been wrong. The phone rang. Linda, calling from the airport in Seattle. Mom, I saw the news. Are you okay? I'm on the next flight. I'm fine, sweetheart. It's over. Mom, you took down an entire criminal organization. I smiled. I protected my home, that's all. The trial took place 6 months later. Sarah Morrison's meticulous investigation had uncovered everything. Bank records showing the stolen money, forged documents, testimony from other victims who'd finally found the courage to come forward. The evidence was overwhelming. I sat in the courtroom every single day, wearing my best dress, my head held high. I wanted Carolyn Hendricks and David Price to see me, to understand that they hadn't broken me. Linda flew in from Seattle and sat beside me, holding my hand. Robert Chen represented me personally, waiving his fees. Even Carol attended, glaring at the defendants with the fury of a protective friend. The prosecution laid out the full scope of their operation. 4 homes stolen, totaling $3.2 million. 17 victims who'd been robbed or scammed in smaller ways. Years of preying on vulnerable elderly people, using their grief and loneliness as weapons. Carolyn's attorney tried to paint her as a businesswoman who'd made some questionable decisions. David's lawyer claimed he'd just been following orders. The others pleaded for mercy, claiming they'd been manipulated. The jury saw through every lie. When the verdicts came back, guilty on all counts for all 5 defendants, I felt something release in my chest. Justice. Real, concrete justice. The sentencing was even more satisfying. Carolyn Hendricks received 15 years in federal prison for fraud, elder abuse, and conspiracy. David Price got 12 years. The others received sentences ranging from 6 to 10 years. None would be eligible for parole. But the criminal convictions were only part of it. The civil lawsuit that Robert filed resulted in complete restitution. Every asset they'd hidden, every offshore account, every stolen property, all of it was seized. The 4 homes they'd stolen were returned to the rightful heirs. The money they'd taken from victims was recovered and distributed. For me personally, the court ordered them to pay $200,000 in damages for emotional distress, lost property, and legal fees. Every penny of what they'd stolen was returned, plus punitive damages. But the victory that meant the most came from something else entirely. 3 of their previous victims, elderly people who'd been too ashamed or frightened to come forward, contacted me after the trial. One woman, Grace, had lost her husband's house to these criminals. She'd been living with her daughter, believing she'd simply failed to manage her affairs properly. Learning that she'd been targeted, that it wasn't her fault, gave her closure she'd never thought possible. "You gave me my dignity back," she told me over coffee. "I thought I'd lost my mind. You proved I was just a victim of evil people." We formed a support group, the 5 of us who'd survived their scheme. We met monthly, sometimes just to talk, sometimes to advocate for stronger elder protection laws. Our story made national news. I even testified before the state legislature about the need for better safeguards. The day after sentencing, I changed my will. Half my estate would still go to Linda, but the other half would fund a foundation to help elderly fraud victims with legal fees and investigations. George would have approved. Linda stayed with me for 2 weeks after the trial ended. We sorted through old photos, cooked together, talked about George and memories and the future. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she said one evening. "If I'd been more present, if I'd visited more often, maybe this wouldn't have happened." "They would have targeted me anyway," I assured her. "They were professionals." "But sweetheart, I need you to understand something. I didn't just fight them for me. I fought them so you'd know that your mother is strong, capable, and not someone to be underestimated." She hugged me tightly. I never doubted that for a second. 2 months after the sentencing, I received a letter forwarded from the prison. It was from Carolyn Hendricks, written in cramped handwriting. "Mrs. Patterson, I won't apologize because you wouldn't believe me anyway, but I need you to know. We chose you because you seemed weak, alone, an easy target. We were wrong about everything. You cost me my freedom, my money, and my future. I hope you're satisfied." I read it once, then filed it away with the rest of the evidence. Satisfied? Yes, I was satisfied. She'd spent her life preying on people she perceived as weak. Now she'd spend years in prison, learning that strength has nothing to do with age or being alone. Jim, My neighbor, who'd started everything with his simple warning, brought over a bottle of champagne the day I received the restitution check. To Margaret Patterson, he toasted, the toughest woman on Maple Street. I clinked my glass against his. To neighbors who pay attention, that night I sat in George's reading chair and looked around my home. Every object, every corner, every memory was mine again, truly mine. No one could take it from me now. I'd won completely, utterly, without compromise. And it felt glorious. A year after the trial, my life had transformed in ways I never expected. The foundation I'd established, the George Patterson Elder Protection Fund, was thriving. We'd helped 12 families fight fraud cases, prevented 2 other homes from being stolen, and sponsored legislation that passed in 3 states requiring better verification for home healthcare workers and estate attorneys. I'd become something of an accidental activist. I gave speeches at senior centers about recognizing fraud, wrote articles for retirement magazines, and even appeared on a national morning show to discuss elder financial abuse. At 73, I'd found a purpose I never knew I needed. Linda visited every other month now, sometimes bringing Marcus, her fiancé. We'd grown closer through the ordeal. She no longer treated me like I might break, and I'd learned to accept help without seeing it as a loss of independence. Carol and I started a book club specifically for true crime stories, which gave us endless entertainment. Jim installed a proper security system as a gift, though I barely needed it anymore. The whole neighborhood watched out for me now. I even started dating, much to Linda's delighted surprise. A retired professor named Arthur, who'd heard me speak at the library, struck up a conversation about fraud prevention and ended up asking me to dinner. Nothing serious yet, but the companionship was lovely. George would have wanted me to be happy. The house felt like mine again. I'd redecorated the bedroom, painted the study a warm cream color, and planted new roses in the garden, yellow ones this time, for new beginnings. But the sweetest victory came from tracking what happened to my enemies. Carolyn Hendricks was serving her sentence in a federal women's prison in Pennsylvania. According to reports Sarah occasionally sent me, she'd become a friend beyond just an investigator. Carolyn was not adjusting well. She'd been accustomed to luxury, control, manipulation. Prison offered none of those things. Her brother, the probate attorney who'd helped with the legal side of their schemes, had been disbarred and faced his own criminal charges. Their entire family's reputation was destroyed. David Price was in a different facility, a medium security prison where he worked in the laundry for pennies an hour. The man who'd walked through my home with such confidence, stealing my husband's coins and photographing my documents, now folded prison uniforms and ate cafeteria food. Sarah had learned through her contacts that he'd been beaten up twice by other inmates who particularly despised those who preyed on the elderly. I didn't take pleasure in violence, but I couldn't deny a certain grim satisfaction in the information. The 3 others received similar fates. The nervous man who'd pointed at me in my own home was reportedly suffering panic attacks in prison. The large one who'd threatened me had gotten into fights and spent months in solitary confinement. The woman who'd helped them had tried to appeal her sentence and failed miserably. But beyond their prison sentences, they'd lost everything else too. Their seized assets had been distributed to victims. Their offshore accounts were frozen and emptied. Their fake businesses were dissolved. Their names were permanently associated with elder fraud. A simple Google search would reveal their crimes forever. Even after release, they'd be registered in databases, monitored, unemployable in any position of trust. Their lives, as they'd known them, were finished. Meanwhile, the victims they'd hurt were healing. Grace, the woman who'd lost her husband's house, had her property restored to her children. She'd moved back into a small apartment nearby and visited the house sometimes, finding peace in knowing it was back in her family. Another victim, a widower named Harold, had recovered enough funds to pay for his granddaughter's college tuition, money he'd thought was lost forever. Each recovery felt like another victory, proof that fighting back had been worth every moment of fear and stress. On the anniversary of that Wednesday when Jim had stopped me with his warning, I threw a garden party. Linda flew in, Arthur brought wine, Carol made 3 casseroles. Sarah came with her husband. Robert Chen arrived with a beautiful card, and Jim showed up with flowers. We stood in the backyard, surrounded by George's roses and my new yellow ones, and I raised my glass. A year ago, I was a victim. Today, I'm a survivor, an advocate, and surrounded by the best people I know. To second chances, to justice, and to never underestimating a determined woman. Everyone cheered. As the sun set over my garden, I thought about those criminals in their cells, facing years of their well-deserved punishment. I thought about the lives they'd tried to destroy and the victory we'd claimed over them. I'd not only survived, I'd thrived. I'd turned my trauma into purpose, my fear into strength, and my isolation into community. They'd tried to take everything from me. Instead, I'd taken everything from them. And I'd never felt more alive. Looking back now, I understand that my greatest weapon wasn't the cameras or the lawyer or even the evidence. It was refusing to be a victim. They counted on my silence, my shame, my fear. They never expected me to fight back. So I ask you, if someone tried to steal your home, your dignity, your life's work, what would you do? Would you surrender, or would you stand your ground? Trust your instincts, document everything, never be ashamed to ask for help. And remember, age is not weakness, experience is power. Thank you for listening to my story. If it happened to me, it could happen to anyone. Stay vigilant, stay